Choosing what to research is not simple. There's a lot of technologies to choose from. It's going to be heavily based on your long-term goals, your short-term goals, little things like that. There are some really powerful techs. I know under inorganic chemistry, I'm pretty sure that that artificial fertilizer is really powerful. 2% farming input is pretty strong. And there's a lot of different productions that get boosted from that as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure inorganic chemistry is considered one of the really key techs. Railroads are very important as well. They give you huge production benefits just wherever you have a railroad. Just allows railroad +1 level. Yeah, so it just allows you more and more kind of powerful railroads, more distributed railroads. I think clean coal is also pretty good. I mean, huge production bonus if you've got coal or some of these other things. Yeah, if you've got a lot of coal, like going to clean coal is amazingly good. The military techs obviously are really good if you're going to war. Some of them unlock new units, like muzzle-loaded rifles would actually unlock engineers, and some just make your units better. Again, either the base benefit or one of the inventions that you can get later on really help you out. So, so that's research. Note, if you're playing an uncivilized nation like we were with Japan, you can't do research here to start off with. The next tab is, politics, which normally you would start on the reform tab. So this is, there's actually multiple levels to the politics because you have your, oh, we can't actually choose this. 100% conservative upper house, interesting. There's different branches of your government, basically. There's a sort of House Senate type thing. You know, you have a monarchy, you have all kinds of different things like that. And depending on what nation you are and what your politics currently are, there are different potentials for making changes to that. You know, do you have a monarchy or do you just have a completely sort of free elected population? You do often have the opportunity to change. Yeah, see, we don't because of our what, vote franchise? The upper house, maybe? It's because of some of these things, we don't have the ability to just choose which party is in power. It's entirely based on elections. And each party has a slightly different platform. For example, the Democrats and the Whigs are both free trade. This is their trade policy, whereas the Southern Democrats are more protectionist, right? They care more about our nation's products and want slightly less international trade. One of the most important things you can that your parties influence is your economic policy, interventionism versus laissez-faire versus state capitalism. So this controls what we were talking about with the factories before. If we were state capitalists, we could build our own factories. I think, and capitalists could as well. There is one other level, I can't remember what it's called. I don't think it's socialist or communist or anything like that. It's damn it, I don't remember. But at that point, capitalists can't open factories at all. Capitalists have no power. So state capitalism is sort of like a midway. You can build factories, but so can capitalists. In an interventionist system, which is what we have now, we can't build factories, but we can subsidize them and help them out and do different things like that. We may be able to upgrade them, I'm not sure. And then in a completely laissez-faire economy, you don't screw around with anything like that. I think. Just looking at the list of things it does. They also have implications about maximum tax rates and that sort of thing. You also have social reforms. These unlock over time based on sort of your citizens' demands and their consciousness and different things like that. Right now, no one is demanding anything specific in terms of minimum wage. But at some point, people might, their consciousness levels may raise. People will want certain reforms and may start to demand some amount of minimum wage, in which case you can choose to ignore that, you can implement that, and you're going to base that partially based on your own desires, but also based on how many people want the change. And then you're balancing people who are going to be pissed off when you make it, and people who are going to be pissed off if you don't make the change. We've got movements here, and we don't have any right now, but you might have something like a movement for minimum wage or for abolishing slavery. And in the States, you'll get a lot of these movements. And sometimes these movements can become militarized, or your population might become militant, in which case you will get rebels, and once they reach a certain breaking point, they will actually appear as military units on the map and really try to mess up your stuff. And if they sort of win a war against you, then you will be forced to make some sort of change. For example, you might be forced to make a political reform, even if you don't want to. Or you might be forced to undo a reform that you put in. That happens if they are reactionary rebels. There are a variety of decisions available. These are going to be highly dependent on what nation you're playing and what different criteria you have met. So as the United States, we could implement Manifest Destiny or the Trail of Tears, the House Gag Rules, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So all these things are described. If you mouse over the question mark, it tells you what you have to meet to be able to enact that. So we can't do this right now. It is grayed out. We need an average consciousness of at least 3. We'll talk about what that means soon enough. And then we could enact it, which would cause some people to gain consciousness and other people to lose consciousness. Little things like that. Manifest Destiny gives us a bunch of cores all over where, what we think of the United States as is. Manifest Destiny was a term that was developed at the time that was basically like, no, we kind of get to take over everything. It's ours. Yeah, no, Mexico, no, that land is ours too. Well, not all of Mexico, but, parts that Mexicans call Mexico at this point. As well, if you're playing the United States, you're going to want to use this at some point. You need to have invented Romanticism and at least 50 prestige before you can pull that off. And you also have the ability to release nations. We could, that's interesting. Right now, the province of Bangor, but I think it said Bangor in Maine, we could release that and we could give it to Canada, for example. Little things like that. We could, here we go. We could actually release New England completely here. Or we could create a Cherokee nation. Oh, that's really interesting. Or yeah, we could release New England as an independent state. It would get 9 provinces. That's interesting, and if we did that, we'd have the option of whether we want to play as New England or not. We probably wouldn't do that as the states, but it's an option. Some places there will be a lot of division between your different regions, and breaking something off may be the only solution at some point. So that is politics. Next we'll look at population, which is, if you like numbers and graphs and charts, man, this is the place to be. On the left-hand side, we have our entire nation, which has 4 million pops, or population points right now. Everything in the game is divided basically into these pops. That's your most important factor. Then we have our different states or regions, and that's subdivided into our actual provinces. So in Long Island, we have 25,000 people. And it is divided into these 4 pops. A pop is a subdivision of your populace, right? Yeah, I think maybe it's point of population. I'm not sure if it stands for something, if it's short form or what, but they are divided based on their profession. So you can see here we have artisans, clergymen, farmers. They're also divided by their nationality. Now here we have all Yankees, but we could have our clergymen split into 2 separate subgroups. For example, if you look at Canada, you'll see people who recognize themselves as, I think, British, and people who recognize themselves as Cree. We may have that in some of our different states as well. There are also divisions by religion. So again, we could have clergymen who are British Protestants, we could have clergymen who are British Catholics, and so on, and you get these subgroupings and subgroupings and subgroupings. Their location, well, we know it's only Long Island. Say if we clicked on New York, we would get more pops there. Their militancy. This is how really mad they are about things and how likely they are to actually rebel, or at least be loud and complaining and whining. Consciousness is their sort of awareness about their state and the ability to improve themselves. People with high consciousness will request political reform. They want things to improve. They want things to change. People with low consciousness are totally happy being bossed around, and they're fine with the status quo, for example. Ideologies that they have. So these Yankee artisans, and again, these are specifically glass makers, right? We could have multiple different types of artisans in one region. These are people who are making glass. They are 45% conservative, 31% reactionary, and 23% liberal. So liberal people want political reform. Conservatives kind of just want to keep things as is, and reactionaries actually want to go back to some previous state. There can be other groupings later on. Right now, these are only the only sort of ideologies kicking around, but these can expand. And as more ideologies get sort of created and reformed and modified, more political parties will come up. Right now we've just got those 3 political parties, right? Oops, keep doing that. But some countries will start with more, and more political parties will appear. At some point, we might have a communist party here. We might get an anarchist party. The Democratic Party might reform. So the Democratic Party here can never change any of its policies, but what can happen is this Democratic Party can go away and a new one can reappear, even instantly, with some different traits. So, they can sort of change, but not really. These are their issues they care about. Pro-military, state capitalism, protectionism, slavery, allowed or outlawed. And these have impacts on what reforms people are going to come and ask for. Unemployment level, how much money they have sitting around. And they will use that money to buy themselves better goods, protect themselves in bad economic times, and also, I think, upgrade themselves to higher population types. Are they getting their life needs, everyday needs, and so on? And I think there's a way. Here we are, we can click and get more details and even see what their life needs are. They want a little bit of wool, cattle, fish, fruit, and grain. So mostly food and a little bit of basic clothing. That's their life need. If that gets met, then they start looking at fancier stuff. A little coal, glass, paper, tobacco, that sort of thing. And again, if they get all that met, then they're going to start looking at luxury needs. Coffee, opium, wine, luxury clothing, luxury furniture, and all these things make them more and more satisfied. And I think affects their ability to upgrade. Whether these guys belong to any rebel faction, what their population changes, are they going up, down, and their literacy, which has huge impacts on your research rate especially, but there's a few other things. And yeah, when we're looking at just one place, for example, if we're looking at just Long Island, we can get a breakdown of their stuff there. We can also filter it. If we want to deselect everyone, and only show me what soldiers care about. Because soldiers are some of the most dangerous people to have as a rebellion, right? Because they leave your army, and your army goes down. Meanwhile, the rebellion has a really well armed army all of a sudden, which is kind of dangerous. So that is the population tab. There's a lot to look out there. Again, you can pay a lot of attention to it, or a little bit of attention to it, and a lot of it's going to depend on how your country is going, based on the stability. If you've got a very stable country, you're not going to be spending a lot of time in this menu. But if rebellions are at risk of popping up everywhere, you're going to go in here and see, okay, exactly who's pissed off. Let's look at all of the US and sort them all by militancy. So you can see, these artisans in Syracuse have a little bit of militancy and what their change is, and try to figure out how to make them happy, or at least what's pissing them off. The trade menu. This is one I really don't spend a lot of time in because it's very complex and luckily very, very automated. As you can see here. So this is your country buying and selling goods on the global market. Leaving it automated is a really good idea. Potentially you could do something like, if very soon you're going to be building up a military, maybe a bunch of ships, well, you could go and look at the Clipper convoy components. These are parts you need to build certain types of ship. Well, you might, and you see that the price is low, you might take it off automate, you might start stockpiling some of those goods that you're going to want later on. I really don't recommend it early on, but it's possible. So you can get some more details about the various goods. You can see there's a lot of goods. There's also a great mod out there that adds a huge number of extra goods and tweaks how the industry happens without changing the gameplay too much. And I will probably play it at some point. Check the comments. There's someone pointing out what that mod is called right now. It just slipped my mind. Diplomacy. Well, this is that other type of warfare, right? Diplomacy. Or is war diplomacy by other means? One or the other. Every country in the world is represented here, including some that you may have never heard of, some that may not exist anymore, and your relationship with them. And as a great power, you can also influence them. You can influence them in special ways by bringing them into your political sphere, at which point you have a special and unique relationship with them. And they really kind of follow you. They're not part of your country, but they're as close as they can get without you actually going over there and conquering them, basically. They trade with you first. If there's a war that happens, I think they will jump on board. Or more importantly, actually, if anyone declares war on them, you jump in and defend them. And there's certain economic advantages to doing that sort of thing. And only the great powers can do that. The 8 great powers, the 8 top countries in the world in terms of prestige, industry, and military size. Military size makes a lot of sense. That's pretty clear what that is. Industry, sure, okay, how much industry stuff you're doing. What is prestige? Prestige are points that you earn by doing various things that do nothing in and of themselves. They just affect this global ranking. And also they can be used to enact certain, some of those decisions need a certain minimum prestige. But even though it doesn't do anything directly, it's very important because your global ranking has tremendous impact on your ability to influence the world and also perform trade. Very important. We can also see if there's any wars going on right now and who's on what side. And also war justification. So if you watched my video, you saw that. But let's say we want to go to war with Afghanistan. That's never happened before. We can't just declare war because we don't have something called a casus belli right now, which is something that exists in virtually all the Paradox games, Europa Universalis, all these sorts of things. A casus belli just means reason for war. We don't have a reason for war, so we can't just declare war. We need a good justification. And sometimes what will happen automatically, for example, if Afghanistan was in debt and had borrowed money from us and they went bankrupt, we might be able to declare war on them for that to get some reparations. If there's been an insult, little things like that could give us a casus belli. We can also try to justify it. We can start pulling diplomatic strings. We can start bringing up some dirt in the newspaper. We can just do various things internationally to justify some kind of war, to conquer them, add them to our sphere forcefully, cut them down to size, which if we win that war, we will force them to limit their military size, for example. We can just humiliate them. All that does is decrease their prestige and increase our prestige. Little things like that, demand various concessions and things. We can choose what our goal is and then proceed. And it will take a certain amount of time. For example, like conquest justification would take almost a year to get going. And if we're detected, we get infamy. So that is like that sort of badness, right? You get too much infamy, everyone in the world looks at you like a villain, and then they actually get a free casus belli against you. They can attack you, declare war on you whenever they want, with no repercussions whatsoever. So infamy is something you really have to manage if you're going to be playing aggressively. Different things generate different amounts of infamy. So, humiliating is much lower. Making a puppet is much less infamous than conquering people outright. Conquering, you actually add them to your country, sort of legit. They're just part of the US. Whereas a puppet, they would still be Afghanistan, but they would be kind of under our control. It's not unlike the whole sphere thing, but it's more. I don't know how the best way to describe it. And there are, of course, other things you can do. You generate diplomacy points over time, and you spend those points to do various things, justifying wars or just improving relations with one another, that sort of thing. These are our current relations. We're currently at -10. It goes from -200 to +200 in terms of friendship. People can be allied with each other, different things like that. The last tab we're going to look at is the military tab. This shows you all your current armies. Oh, so we have a few more than I thought. Your current navy and the ability to build more army, which we can't actually right now. We literally are at our cap of brigades. We would need more soldiers. So I think that population will build up over time. But normally you would pick it here, you would click on the different tabs, whether you're building infantry or cavalry or artillery, that sort of thing. You also gain a certain amount of points that you can spend. It's a leadership points that you can spend to create or recruit a general or an admiral, and you put those in charge of your individual armies, and they give pretty substantial bonuses to those units. By default, these will be automatically created and automatically assigned, but you can turn that off if you want a little bit more manual control. And that is the main overview of the different aspects of the game. So I hope more of the concepts you now understand, and you'll be able to enjoy the Let's Play that much more. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.